Welcome to the sleep carriage. My name is Christopher. Tonight we're slipping into the dusty heart of ancient Athens, the Agora, the city's bustling marketplace where stomachs rumbled, sandals shuffled, and pretty much everyone smelled faintly of garlic. You probably wouldn't survive this place with too much sun, too many fish guts, but don't worry, you're here only in spirit, wrapped in your blanket. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love it if you posted in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air is warm, already buzzing with flies as you step into the open square of the Agora. The stones beneath your feet are uneven, worn smooth by thousands of sandals before yours. You smell smoke curling from a brazier, mixing with the sharp scent of olives and the brine of salted fish. People are already shouting, haggling, waving their arms in exasperation. And yet there's a rhythm to it all, the rhythm of life at the center of Athens. You're hungry. Your stomach gives a little twist, as if it knows this place exists to tempt you. But you're not alone, no one comes here just for one thing. Philosophers linger near the colonnades, debating loudly about whether numbers are real or imagined. Farmers from the countryside unload wicker baskets of grapes and figs. Goats bleat somewhere nearby, tied to posts until their cheese or milk is sold. A vendor waves at you, holding up a loaf still warm from the oven. The crust is hard, the inside pale and heavy, made of barley flour rather than wheat. Wheat, after all, is for the rich. You break off a piece, chew slowly, and the flavor is dense, nutty, filling. Not luxurious but dependable. Some historians argue barley bread was so common it became almost invisible, like water you hardly noticed it, but life would collapse without it. You glance around as the crowd thickens. There's a line of children trailing behind a woman balancing a clay pot on her head. Men lean on walking sticks, muttering about politics as though democracy is decided by who yells loudest. A dog noses along the ground, hopeful for scraps. The Agora is chaotic, yes, but also strangely comforting because everyone, high or low, ends up here when they're hungry. A breeze stirs dust into your sandals. The air smells of smoke, bread, animals, and humanity all mixed together. It isn't fresh, not by any stretch, but it's alive, grounding. You realize that in this place, food isn't just food, it's currency, conversation, even identity. What you eat and how you eat it quietly tells the world who you are. You take another bite of bread, and already you're curious what else the Agora has hidden for you. The bread settles heavy in your stomach, but the Agora has more to tempt you. You catch another scent, sharper now, tangy and a little sour. Your nose follows it the way a dog trails after meat, and soon you find yourself standing before a stall stacked with white, crumbly wheels of goat cheese. The vendor, with hands chalky from salt, slices off a wedge and gestures toward you. You pinch a piece between your fingers, rough and cool, and taste it. It's sharp, salty, with a faint earthy note that lingers on the tongue. Your lips pucker slightly, and you wonder how Athenians balanced this flavor with something so sweet as honey. But they did, and quite often. You watch another buyer dip a slice into a clay pot of honey, golden and sticky, and pop it into his mouth with a satisfied sigh. It's an odd combination, yet it makes sense. Sweet to soften the sharp. Goat cheese was not just food, it was survival. The herds could graze on rocky hillsides where wheat would never grow. Cheese lasted longer than milk, and a hunk of it with barley bread could carry you through a long day. Some historians even claim Greek soldiers marched with goat cheese tucked in their packs, proof that armies are sometimes fueled not by glory, but by something tangy and crumbly. The vendor chuckles as you eat, pointing out that the cheese is fresh, too fresh, he insists, to have been carried far. His teeth are missing here and there, but his pride in his product is intact. Around you, voices rise in argument, not about politics this time, but about quality. One woman insists her neighbor waters down his honey. Another claims her goats are happier and therefore tastier. You smile, realizing that no age escapes petty disputes about food. You take another piece, this time with honey, and the contrast is startling. Sweet and savory at once, sticky and salty, rough and smooth. It feels indulgent, though you know it is common fare. Cheese and honey, they said, pleased not just mortals but the gods themselves. Offerings of both were left at temples, proof that even Olympus respected the pairing. There's a faint hum in the air now, maybe bees wandering from the hives kept just outside the city. A child chases one, giggling until her mother yanks her back, scolding her in sharp tones. The rhythm of life carries on, people bargaining, tasting, chewing, laughing. You lean against a column for a moment, chewing slowly, letting the flavor linger while the agora continues to swirl around you. And you realize as the cheese softens on your tongue, that this marketplace is not just about eating. It's about being seen. The agora is as much theater as it is grocery. Every bite is part of the show. You drift onward, the taste of honey and cheese still clinging to your tongue. But the breeze shifts and suddenly another smell rolls over you, thick, briny, unmistakable. Fish. Always fish. The agora hums with it, as if Poseidon himself sent the sea inland to fill every stall. You follow your nose to a long row of tables where glistening bodies lie packed in baskets, scales catching the sunlight. Small anchovies, dark sardines, a few eels coiled like ribbons, and larger catches brought in from the coast. A vendor calls out, waving a thin, silvery fish high in the air as if it's a trophy. His voice is loud, scratchy, and insistent. He wants you to believe this particular fish is fresher than the rest, though it looks much like its neighbors. You lean closer. The smell makes your nose wrinkle, but you imagine it sizzling over a clay hearth. The Greeks adored fish even more than meat. Meat was for sacrifices, rare festivals. Fish, though fish was the daily prize. Anchovy salted, mullet grilled, eel stewed in spices. They were staples of the city's appetite, and Athens, pressed against the sea, had no shortage. You watch a woman argue over price. She holds a sardine close to her face, inspecting the eyes. Too cloudy, she complains. The vendor swears it was caught that very morning. She frowns, then buys it anyway, muttering under her breath. You smile. Some things never change: the suspicion of vendors, the hope of getting something fresh, the resignation of settling for less. Some historians whisper about a particular obsession. Athenians loved eels from Lake Capes in Boeotia. Not just loved, revered. A delicacy so prized it shows up in plays, joked about as the ultimate treat. You glance at the coiled body of one such eel, its skin slimy and patterned, and wonder how far it traveled just to end up here, in this loud and crowded square. The fishmongers are rough, their hands always wet, their tunics splattered. They shout louder than the others, partly to rise above the smell, partly to insist their fish is best. Your sandals crunch over stray scales on the ground. Cats dart between legs, tails twitching, hoping for scraps. You feel the chaos tighten around you, but strangely, it's comforting. This is Athens, breathing, eating, surviving. You imagine biting into a strip of salted anchovy, the salt burning your tongue, the meat chewy and dense. Not elegant but sustaining. Some claim these little fish fed the poor as bread fed the stomach. Others argue it was more than necessity, it was culture. Plays, poetry, and conversations in the agora all circled back to fish, as if no democracy could function without them. The air is sticky now, heavy with brine. You feel it cling to your skin, to your tunic, to the folds of the marketplace itself. But beneath the smell lies something softer, a sense of community. Everyone eats. Everyone bargains. Everyone hopes the fish they buy today is the best. And as you step back, letting another eager customer push forward, you realize that fish isn't just food here. Athens itself is slippery, noisy, and alive. You pull away from the fishmongers, grateful for a breath of air less soaked in brine. Your feet shuffle over the stone as you follow the hum of quieter voices toward a cluster of clay pots balanced on low tables. Steam curls lazily into the sunlight, carrying with it the soft, earthy scent of something simple. Lentils. A vendor ladles a thick, brownish soup into bowls, passing them into eager hands. The steam fogs the air, blurring the edges of faces for a moment. You watch as a worker, his tunic smeared with dust, slurps noisily, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand before trudging off toward the city walls. Another woman sips slowly, eyes half shut, as if each spoonful is both medicine and memory. You edge closer and soon a bowl is in your hands too. The lentils are soft, almost creamy, flavored with onion and perhaps a sprinkle of coriander. The taste is simple, earthy and steady. It doesn't excite you, not like honey or fresh bread, but it grounds you. You feel it sink into your stomach with a quiet weight, like the foundation of a house. The Greeks had a saying: lentils were the poor man's meat. Easy to grow, easy to cook, filling enough to keep hunger away. Philosophers ate them, farmers ate them, soldiers ate them. Some even said Pythagoras frowned on beans, but lentils were fair game, a curious loophole in his dietary philosophy. Historians debate why lentils became so firmly rooted in Greek diets. Some claim it was a necessity. Others argue it was tradition, comfort, the rhythm of eating what had always been eaten. A vendor jokes with you, saying lentil soup could cure sadness. You chuckle softly, though with each spoonful you do notice a kind of quiet spreading through you. Perhaps it's not far from the truth. The warm, mushy texture has a sleepy kindness to it, like food that doesn't demand attention, just trust. Nearby, a group of young men argue about politics, each gesturing wildly with spoons in their hands. Between bites they debate whether Athens should build more ships or fewer or none at all. Their words clash, but the soup unites them. You realize that even in a city buzzing with drama, lentils bring people back to something ordinary, something steady. You glance down at your empty bowl, the last drops clinging to the clay rim. Nothing fancy, nothing rare. But you feel a quiet satisfaction, the sort that reminds you that sometimes the humblest foods are the ones that carry a city on their backs. The agora swirls on fish sellers still shouting, bread still breaking, but for a brief moment you feel content. Just you, a bowl of lentils, and the warmth of the Athenian sun. You step away from the warmth of lentils, the earthy flavor still clinging faintly to your tongue. But now a sharper scent cuts through the air, stinging your nose before you even see its source. Garlic. Strong, pungent, undeniable. You follow the sound of crunching and laughter to a stall stacked with bundles of garlic bulbs, their papery skins rustling in the breeze. A man beside you peels a clove with his thumb, pops it into his mouth raw, and chews with pride, as though daring the world to comment on his breath. His friends laugh, then do the same, the aroma exploding outward until you're standing in a cloud of sharpness. You hesitate. Raw garlic isn't exactly inviting. Yet in Athens it is everywhere. The poor ate it with bread. Soldiers marched with it tucked into their packs. Even athletes swore by it, chewing cloves before competitions as if garlic itself carried strength. You give in, crunching down on a small piece. The taste burns, bitter and fiery, crawling up into your sinuses. Your eyes water slightly. Around you nobody blinks, it's simply part of the rhythm of life here. Some historians suggest garlic was so beloved that entire districts smelled of it, an invisible signature of the working class. It was said to repel evil spirits, though others muttered it repelled friends more effectively. There's even a story about how priests banned garlic breath in certain temples, insisting the gods deserved sweeter offerings. You smirk at the thought mortals weren't the only ones turning up their noses. As you chew, you realize that in a city full of arguments, garlic may have been the great equalizer. No matter your class, your status, your lofty philosophy, everyone's breath smelled the same after a clove or two. The air of the agora practically vibrates with it, layered over the bread, fish, and smoke until it becomes part of the very identity of Athens itself. You catch the eye of another buyer who grins through a mouthful of garlic and shrugs as if to say, "Yes, it's awful, and yes, we all love it anyway." You laugh softly. Garlic, in its stubborn sharpness, is oddly comforting. It reminds you that not everything needs to be pleasant to be essential. The vendor ties a bundle with twine and presses it into your hand. You carry it along as you walk, the smell clinging to your fingers, your breath, the folds of your clothes. There's no escaping it now, you belong to the agora, garlic and all. You drift further into the marketplace, clutching your bundle of garlic, when something sweeter tugs gently at your attention. The air grows thicker, softer, tinged with the fragrance of fruit ripening in the sun. A stall just ahead is stacked with figs, plump and purple, their skins split open in places to reveal the sticky pink flesh within. Next to them, jars of golden honey catch the light, glowing as if captured from the very gods. You step closer and the vendor greets you with a sly smile. He plucks a fig, tears it open with his fingers and dips it into honey. The fruit drips as he offers it to you. You take a bite. The skin is tender, the inside sweet and seedy, the honey flowing over your tongue like silk. It clings to your fingers, sticky and warm, demanding you lick them clean. Athenians adored figs. They grew easily in the dry soil, filled bellies quickly, and carried a quiet symbolism. Some said figs were sacred to Demeter, goddess of the harvest. Others whispered that figs were Athens' secret weapon. Nutritious, plentiful, the kind of food that quietly keeps a city alive while its citizens argue about philosophy. You glance at a boy nearby, his cheeks smeared with juice, and wonder if he knows he's eating a legacy. Honey too was more than sweetener. Bees were thought to be divine messengers, their golden gift used in rituals, offerings, and medicine. Athenians stirred it into wine, smeared it onto bread, and drizzled it over cheese. Some historians even suggest honey was believed to bring immortality, though you doubt anyone chewing garlic cloves believed they'd live forever. Still, the sticky sweetness makes you pause, makes you dream a little. The vendor leans forward, whispering a joke about a neighbor's figs being watery, not worth the price. You smile, remembering how easily pride weaves itself into every bite here. Food is not just food, it's reputation. To sell figs too soft, honey too thin, was almost a crime against the city's appetite. You take another fig, this time without honey, and the difference strikes you. It's still sweet, earthy, and slightly chewy. But with honey it felt heavenly. Without it, it feels honest. You like both, and perhaps that's the trick. Athenians lived between the two, indulgence and simplicity side by side. A fly lands on your sticky finger and you brush it away lazily. Around you the agora hums on. Figs drip. Honey gleams. Children laugh with mouths full of sugar. You breathe deeply, the sweetness mingling with the garlic still clinging to your breath, and you can't help but chuckle. Athens is nothing if not a city of contradictions. The sweetness still clings to your lips when another aroma beckons, one darker, deeper, like ripe grapes warmed under the Mediterranean sun. You follow it to a shaded stall where clay amphorae stand in neat rows, their mouths sealed with wax. A vendor leans lazily against one, tapping the clay with his knuckles so it gives a hollow echo. His smile is knowing. You've arrived at the wine cellars. He pours a little into a cup, thin and sharp on your tongue. But before you can comment, he lifts a pitcher of water and dilutes it right there, swirling it before handing it back. The taste softens, less aggressive, more like a conversation than a shout. Athenians mixed water into their wine not just out of preference, but as a point of pride. To drink it unmixed, pure and strong, marked you as barbaric, fit for Thracians maybe, but not for citizens of Athens. You glance around and see others doing the same, sipping from shallow cups, their words loosening as the afternoon stretches on. Some are workers resting from the heat. Others are philosophers already deep in discussion, waving their cups in rhythm with their arguments. A group of men laugh loudly at one corner, clapping each other on the back, while another man snoozes in the shade, cup still dangling in his hand. Some historians debate how strong the wine truly was, whether it was potent enough to overwhelm or simply mild. What's certain is that it shaped the very rhythm of the agora. Deals were struck over cups of watered wine. Friendships formed, debates carried, songs sung. You take another sip, and it trickles down like liquid sunlight, calming, stretching time. The vendor chuckles, pointing out that the best wines come from islands like Chios and Lesbos, though he insists his stock is nearly as fine. You nod politely, knowing every seller in this square believes the same about their own jars. Still, you can't help but imagine the journey of grapes crushed far away, the juice sealed in clay, carried by boat across the Aegean just to land in your hands here. Nearby, a youth plucks a lyre and begins to sing, his voice rising gently over the din. It isn't polished, but it drifts, weaving with the warmth of the wine until even the marketplace feels like it exhales. The agora, usually so noisy, seems to hush a little, lulled by music and diluted drink. You sip again, slowly letting the taste linger. Wine and water, simple as it seems, is a reminder of Athens' balance, strength tempered with restraint, indulgence softened by moderation. You set the cup down, and the sun feels a little less harsh, the crowd a little softer, the day a little kinder. Your lips are still stained faintly with wine when another curious scent tickles the air, a rich, nutty fragrance, earthy yet sweet, like roasted grain after rain. You follow it to a stall lined with jars of golden paste, each glistening with an almost hypnotic shine. The seller scoops some onto a flat wooden spoon and offers it to you with a sly grin. You taste, and it's unlike anything else. Thick, sticky, slightly gritty, and almost overwhelming in its sweetness. Honey. The Athenians prized it, gathering it from the busy hives nestled on Mount Hymettus, just outside the city. Hymetian honey was famed across Greece, its flavor said to be unmatched, golden as the hills where the bees buzzed. You roll it across your tongue and it seems to cling there, refusing to be forgotten. Beside the jars sit trays of curious pastries, flat, folded dough drizzled with honey and sprinkled with sesame seeds. They glisten in the light, little edible jewels. Some look like coiled snakes, others like squares layered with crushed nuts. The vendor proudly calls them placounce cakes. You buy one, and as you bite into the sticky pastry, sesame seeds crackle softly between your teeth. Sweetness and nuttiness mingle, and for a moment, you forget the noise of the agora entirely. Not everyone, however, approved of such indulgence. Some philosophers warned that too much sweetness dulled the mind, slowed the body. Others argued honey was medicine as much as food, a cure for sore throats, a balm for wounds. You can imagine the debates unfolding. One man with honey dripping down his chin insisting it's good for the soul, while another, stern-faced, accuses him of weakness. The truth, as always, sits somewhere in the middle. Honey sweetened the daily porridge, made bread more enticing, and was even offered to the gods. You picture priests pouring it onto altars, the golden streams glinting like sunlight itself, as if sweet offerings might draw sweeter fates. Children scurry past the stall, begging for a drop from the seller's spoon, their laughter mixing with the sticky sound of hands and mouths coated in sugar. The vendor winks at you knowingly. It seems some things never change. People have always found ways to sneak dessert into their day. You finish the pastry, licking the honey from your fingers, and notice how it lingers on your skin as if reluctant to leave. Sweetness in Athens is not a passing pleasure but a stubborn one, clinging like memory. You glance back at the stall one last time, thinking that of all the flavors in the agora, this golden one might follow you longest, sticking not just to your lips but to your dreams. Your fingers are still a little tacky with honey when a much less inviting smell drifts over, sharp, briny, and nose-wrinkling. You turn toward a row of clay jars and wooden barrels, their lids lifted just enough to release a powerful wave of fermented tang. This is no sweet delight. This is fish sauce, the strange and stubborn companion of ancient Greek cooking. The merchant beams proudly as if he knows his wares might scare off the unprepared. He stirs one of the jars with a wooden paddle, and you catch a glimpse of a thick amber liquid. The smell is fierce salt, sea, and something darker, but when he offers you a taste, you find it's not as terrible as expected. Salty, yes, and pungent, but also strangely rich, adding depth to the simplest bite of bread. They call it gyros. Made from tiny fish left to ferment in the Mediterranean sun, it was a staple seasoning long before salt shakers existed. A few drops transformed plain grains or dull vegetables into something almost luxurious. Some Athenians adored it, drizzling it over roasted meats and even mixing it with wine. Others sniffed in disdain, declaring it too strong, too foreign, too fishy. A passing customer mutters a joke that Garos was proof the gods had a sense of humor. After all, who would willingly leave fish in a jar until it dissolved into liquid, then declare it a delicacy? Yet here in the agora, you see jars lined up like prized treasures, proof that odd inventions sometimes become everyday essentials. You notice another barrel beside the Garos. This one holds olives wrinkled and glossy, steeped in their own salty bath. You pop one into your mouth and feel the bitter brine give way to oiliness, a taste that lingers on your lips. Olives were everywhere in Athens, as constant as the sun, and no meal felt complete without them. You can almost hear the groves on the hills whispering in the wind, thousands of trees feeding thousands of families. Some philosophers argued the olive tree was Athena's true gift to the city, more valuable than marble or bronze. Bread, oil, and olives together they could sustain a man. Add Garos, and suddenly that humble meal became something complex, layered with sea and soil alike. As you wipe your mouth, you can't help but chuckle softly. Sweet honey on one hand, pungent Garos on the other. Athens knew both extremes: delight and challenge, indulgence and austerity. You imagine a dinner where honey cakes and fish sauce might appear in the same breath, confusing modern taste buds but pleasing those who grew up with such balance. And so you walk on, past the briny haze of the jars, thinking that food, like life, is never all sweet or all bitter. It's both, mingled in curious harmony, the kind of pairing that makes the agora endlessly alive. The sharp scent of fish fades as you drift toward something earthier, an aroma that carries smoke and damp leaves with a hint of musk. A small circle of farmers has gathered near woven baskets piled high with fungi of every shape and color. Mushrooms, foraged from hillsides and forests, sit like little mysteries, each one promising either a hearty stew or, if chosen poorly, a very bad night indeed. The vendor, an older man with soil still crusted under his fingernails, gestures proudly at his collection. You crouch to inspect them, broad, flat caps dusted with dirt, tiny clusters like fingertips, and a few spotted ones that look, frankly, untrustworthy. He grins and assures you that he knows which are safe. You're not entirely convinced, but you pluck one of the larger, pale-bellied mushrooms, give it a cautious sniff, and find it smell strangely comforting like wet stone after rain. Mushrooms in ancient Greece were the kind of food that made people argue. Some praised their deep flavor and soft bite, adding them to soups and roasted meats. Others avoided them entirely, whispering about poisonous lookalikes and strange visions that came to the unlucky. Some historians think Greek cooks mostly treated mushrooms as a curiosity, a garnish more than a staple, but there were always a few bold enough to sauté them with oil and herbs, savoring the way they soaked up flavor. Beside the mushrooms, another merchant is selling bundles of herbs: oregano, thyme, and pennyroyal tied with twine, their scents mingling with the earthy musk. You pick up a sprig of thyme and roll it between your fingers, releasing its sharp, green fragrance. Imagine dropping it into a pot with lentils and mushrooms, stirring slowly while the steam curls into your hair. The agora smells like that imagined stew, warm, simple, alive. Yet there's also pennyroyal with its tiny purple flowers and minty edge. To some it was a beloved seasoning, to others a plant of whispers and warnings. A sprinkle in wine, a dash in stew, sometimes praised, sometimes feared. Too much could bring on stomach cramps or worse, and women especially knew its double-edged reputation as both a soothing herb and something far stronger. You stand there with a handful of herbs and mushrooms, realizing that food in Athens wasn't just about taste. It was about choices, risks, and trust. The forest could feed you or harm you. The herb that calmed your stomach might also hold secrets not everyone dared to name aloud. A breeze rustles through the market, carrying the mingled scents: brine from olives, sweetness from honey, smoke from roasted barley, and this earthy bouquet of mushrooms and herbs. Together, it's overwhelming and yet somehow comforting. The agora is teaching you, gently but firmly, that eating here is as much about courage as it is about hunger. Your stomach gives a small growl and you laugh quietly to yourself. Great. Another day of mud, fish sauce, and mushrooms that may or may not want you gone. And yet you wouldn't trade this peculiar feast for anything. You drift onward, weaving past clusters of buyers and sellers until your eye is caught by something glittering. A row of jars, their sides sticky with golden streaks, sits in the sunlight. Honey thick, slow-moving, almost glowing beckons you closer. The merchant, a woman with sun-darkened skin and bracelets that clink like bees' wings, offers you a wooden spoon dipped into the treasure. You taste it, and the sweetness blooms across your tongue, rich and floral. But this is not just any honey. She tells you it comes from Mount Hymettus, a place famous in Athens for bees that gathered nectar from wild thyme. The flavor is sharp, almost medicinal, laced with the hill's rugged fragrance. To taste this honey is to taste the land itself, rocky, herbal, bright with sunlight. Honey was more than sweetness. It was medicine poured over wounds. It was preservation, sealing fruits in sticky amber. It was a ritual, an offering to the gods. You imagine small clay cups filled with honey set at temple steps, the liquid catching torchlight like molten gold. Some historians think honey was one of the few ways Greeks experienced true indulgence. Sugar did not yet exist here. Honey was luxury and cure, dessert and devotion. Beside the honey stall, something stranger gleams, blocks of candied sesame, brittle and shiny, like a rustic cousin to modern sweets. The crunch echoes in your ears when you bite down, sesame's nutty flavor mingling with that rich honey stickiness. Children in tunics dart by, reaching hands toward the samples. The vendor pretends to scold but slips them crumbs anyway. Then you notice another, far less glamorous concoction. Vinegar sharp enough to sting your eyes as you pass. A stall sells clay jugs of the sour liquid, used for pickling, cleaning, even mixing with water as a poor man's drink. One sip, watered down, is brisk and bracing. Not exactly comforting, but it does the job when wine is scarce or too costly. Soldiers on campaign carried vinegar water, a reminder that survival wasn't always delicious. And then comes the oddest pairing, honey mixed with vinegar. Oxymol, they call it, sweet and sour, a tonic praised for health. You lift a cup, sip, and feel the confusing dance on your tongue. Sweet warmth, sharp bite, then a soothing coolness as you swallow. Some praised it as medicine for sore throats, others as fuel for endurance. You find it peculiar, yes, but strangely pleasant. The agora hums around you, buzzing like the bees of Mount Hymettus. Honey jars catch the light, vinegar jugs wait in their shadows, and sesame crunch sticks like an early version of candy bars. Each item is simple, yet tangled with meaning, luxury, survival, ritual. You set down the cup of oxymol and laugh softly to yourself. Tonight you've eaten mushrooms that could play tricks, herbs that whisper warnings, and now a drink that doesn't know if it's dessert or medicine. Peculiar doesn't even begin to cover it. And yet, this strangeness, this in-between, is exactly what makes the agora alive. You brush the sticky trace of honey from your lips and move on, curious what other flavors Athens still has hidden in its crowded stalls. The air shifts as you wander deeper into the maze of the agora, following the smoke of small clay braziers. Vendors squat behind low tables, turning skewers of something sizzling. You step closer and the aroma rises, charred at the edges, rich with the fat that drips and hisses when it hits the coals. You're looking at the ancient ancestor of the modern souvlaki. Little cubes of pork or goat threaded onto sticks, roasted simply with salt and perhaps a brushing of olive oil. They hand you one wrapped in rough bread to catch the juices. You bite, and suddenly you understand why Athenians made time to stop here, even if just for a few coins worth. Simple, hot, hearty. Food for a citizen, a traveler, or anyone with an empty stomach. Yet alongside this you spot something odder. Small sausages coiled in spirals tied with twine. The vendor explains with a grin that they are made from offal, bits and pieces that the more refined diners at symposia would turn their noses at. But here in the open air, nothing goes to waste. These sausages are seasoned heavily with garlic and herbs to tame the stronger flavors. You take a cautious nibble. Smoky, peppery, Not unpleasant, though perhaps better eaten quickly before you think too hard about it. Then comes a stranger offering, blood pudding thickened with barley and flavored with onions. A recipe so old it feels almost primal. Some Athenians praised it as energizing. Others dismissed it as peasant fare. You can almost hear the voices of philosophers debating whether such foods nourished the body or corrupted it. One man mutters, Aristophanes mocked sausage sellers as greedy cheats, and you imagine laughter spilling across the theater stage at the expense of these humble snacks. The agora itself seems to wink with humor here. Rich men with rings on their fingers might pass by quickly, pretending not to notice these smoky skewers. But laborers, market women, young boys, this is their feast. You feel the warmth of the coals on your face, the grease softening the bread in your hand, and you know this is food born from necessity but loved all the same. One quirky detail catches your eye. Sometimes the skewers are sold pre-wrapped in pita-like flatbread. You pause, realizing you may be holding one of the earliest prototypes of the street foods that still fill Greek cities today. History doesn't always survive in marble columns. Sometimes, it lingers in a piece of grilled meat, folded into warm bread, eaten with your hands while wandering home. As you finish, you lick your fingers, faintly greasy, and notice how the flavors of the agora layer themselves upon you. Honey still clings faintly to your breath, vinegar stings at the edge of memory, and now smoke and meat hang in the air like a heavy cloak. The marketplace is not just a place of buying, it's a place of carrying smells, tastes, crumbs, little stories back into your day. The coals snap loudly as fat drips once more, and for a heartbeat you feel time pause. An Athenian boy chews his skewer beside you, both of you caught in the same rhythm of life. Quick bites, laughter, grease-wiped palms. Different centuries, same simple joy. A little farther on, the smells grow stranger still. You drift toward a row of jars and baskets filled with things that look less like food and more like botanical experiments. This is where Athenians bought snacks of seeds, nuts, and dried fruits, but also where they indulged in flavors that made foreigners wrinkle their noses. One merchant grins proudly as he cracks open a clay pot filled with lupin beans, their golden skins glossy from soaking. You pop one into your mouth, only to be hit with a bitterness so strong it makes your eyes flutter shut. The trick, he explains, is to rinse them for days, leaching out the poison that lurks in the bean. The bitter edge remains, though softened, and Athenians treat them as a cheap, filling nibble, salty little companions to wine. You chew slowly, realizing that one person's snack is another person's endurance test. Nearby, figs spill out of woven baskets, wrinkled and sweet, beloved by athletes who train for the gymnasium. You taste one, and the syrup clings to your teeth, a sticky sweetness that feels almost decadent after the sharp beans. But next to the figs sits a jar of dried mulberries, tart enough to pucker your lips. The seller insists they sharpen the mind, though you suspect they simply make children squirm. A man with a raspy voice thrusts forward a bowl of roasted chestnuts, charred black on the outside. You peel one, the steam tickling your fingertips. Warm, earthy, nutty, it tastes like autumn. He smirks and claims that chestnuts are the food of the sensible poor, while almonds and walnuts belong to the rich. A small hierarchy lives in these snacks, one handful at a time. And then, to your surprise, you come across sesame. Seeds pressed into cakes with honey, glistening in the sunlight. Sweet, nutty, and chewy all at once, these are the ancient cousins of what you might call energy bars. Soldiers took them on campaigns, children begged for them on festival days. You bite down, and the seeds crack gently beneath your teeth, their oily richness flooding your tongue. Suddenly, you see how one small bite could carry someone through a long walk across the agora. But not everything here is pleasant. Another stall offers dried fish roe, pressed into a pungent paste. The smell alone makes you step back, and the seller only laughs, assuring you that it tastes far better than it smells. You're not so sure. Some Athenians swore by its salty punch. Others warned it was an acquired taste best left to those with iron stomachs. You leave it untasted, preserving a little dignity. This section of the market is quieter, fewer fires, fewer crowds, more small bites sold in handfuls and pinches. Yet the sense of experimentation is everywhere. Food here is not only about survival. It is about curiosity, risk, trying the bitter bean, the sharp fruit, the pungent paste, and deciding for yourself whether pleasure lies within. As you move on, you realize your fingers are sticky with fig syrup, your breath still touched by sesame honey, your tongue carrying faint bitterness from lupins. You are a walking sampler platter of the agora now. And though some of the flavors made you wince, each carried a story of athletes, soldiers, children, and philosophers munching between debates. The agora, you realize, is less like a marketplace and more like a chorus of tastes. Some sing in harmony, others clash, but together they tell you something about how people lived, what they valued, what they tolerated, and what they laughed about afterward. You can almost hear the echo of a joke. Eat too many lupins and you'll spend more time rinsing than dining. You smile faintly at the dry humor, wipe your sticky hands on your tunic, and keep walking, following the murmur of another crowd. Something richer, smokier, awaits just beyond. The murmur ahead deepens into a steady hum, carried on a ribbon of smoke that curls above the market stalls. You follow the smell of charcoal, fat, and sizzling flesh and soon arrive at the row of street cooks. This is where the agora becomes not just a place of buying, but of feasting. A man in a soot-stained tunic turns skewers over glowing coals. Strips of meat, perhaps lamb, perhaps goat's, pit and hiss as their juices drip into the fire. He fans the flames with a flat reed, and the scent grows mouth-watering. You notice that this is not a grand meal meant for banquets. These skewers, small and humble, are the ancient cousins of fast food, quick, hot, and cheap enough for a worker to eat standing up. You take one, the charred edges smoky, the center tender. Simple but deeply satisfying. Beside him, another vendor works with a heavy pan set directly on the coals. You lean closer and realize he's frying small fish, dredged in a bit of flour, their skins blistering to a crisp. The crowd around him is larger. These fish are a favorite, cheap and plentiful. A squeeze of sour grape juice or a pinch of salt, and they are devoured by the handful. The crunch fills your ears as much as your mouth, a sound that makes everyone nearby hungrier. You turn to see a younger boy stirring a pot of lentils. The stew is thick, earthy, with flecks of garlic and herbs floating on the surface. No meat here, this is the meal of the poor and the philosophical alike. More than one Athenian thinker declared lentils the perfect food, plain, nourishing, and unpretentious. You take a spoonful and it tastes like the ground itself, steady and grounding. You can almost imagine a student, belly full of lentils, wandering off to listen to Socrates. The smoke grows thicker as you approach another stall, this one cooking something stranger. Coiled sausages, dark with spices, sizzle and pop on the grill. They release a rich smell, strong enough to be both enticing and a little intimidating. The cook grins as he cuts one open. The inside is a jumble of meat scraps, herbs, and yes, even organs. Waste not, want not. To Athenians, sausage was clever thrift, turning what might be discarded into something hearty. You try a slice, and the flavors are bold, peppery, far richer than the simple skewer. It lingers on your tongue like a secret you weren't meant to learn. Children dart around the stalls, clutching figs and sesame cakes in their sticky hands, while older men sip diluted wine from clay cups, using the skewers and sausages as salty companions. You hear bursts of laughter, fragments of gossip, even the clatter of dice being thrown on the ground nearby. The agora is more than a market. It is a living theater of appetite, where food binds together work, leisure, and conversation. Your belly feels full now, though you didn't plan to eat so much. But here, in this place, it feels impossible not to. Each stall beckons with its own melody, each tastes a note in the great song of the city. Smoke clings to your clothes, honey still lingers on your fingertips, and brine whispers faintly on your lips. You are layered in Athens itself, the flavors mingling just as the voices mingle all around. You pause a moment, skewer in hand, and glance up at the Acropolis in the distance, its marble glowing pale against the sky. It feels almost absurd to think that the same city that built such beauty also thrives on sausages and lentils, figs and fish sauce. And yet, isn't that the truth of any great place? That the sublime and the simple live side by side, each making the other richer? With a last bite, you let the char fade from your tongue and step onward, deeper into the market, wondering what peculiar delight or trial awaits next. As you drift further along the crowded row, the savory smoke thins, replaced by a different fragrance, sharp, almost medicinal, with a strange tang that makes your nose twitch. Ahead, a stall is lined with little jars and amphorae, their mouths sealed with wax. The vendor, an older woman with quick hands and a knowing smile, dips a spoon into one jar and offers it toward you. The substance glistens like amber but smells pungent, briny, and strong. You hesitate before tasting it, and when you finally do, your tongue recoils. It is salty, sour, and oddly fishy, a flavor that seems at first like a mistake. Yet beneath the shock lies depth, umami, though the Athenians had no word for it. This is gyros, the fermented fish sauce beloved across Greece. The woman explains how it is made: tiny fish left to break down slowly in the sun, mixed with herbs, salt, and thyme. To you, it sounds more like an accident than a recipe, but in Athens it was an art. A few drops could transform the simplest dish: barley porridge, boiled greens, roasted meat into something rich and unforgettable. You sip a little water, the taste clinging stubbornly to your mouth, and marvel at how such a peculiar, almost unsettling flavor became essential. Not far from her, another merchant sells pickled vegetables, cabbage leaves curled in brine, olives wrinkled and black, garlic bulbs steeped until they glow faintly gold. You sample one of the olives, its skin tough, its flavor sharp and biting. These are not gentle foods meant to comfort. They are bold, meant to awaken the tongue, meant to accompany bread and wine as conversation stretched deep into the evening. A man nearby jokes that gyros is strong enough to cure sorrow, while another swears that pickled garlic keeps away both sickness and unwanted company. You laugh softly. It seems every strange taste has its defenders and its critics. And yet, as you watch the woman seal another jar, you realize these flavors are not accidents of appetite, but necessities of survival. In a city where food spoiled quickly, fermentation was not just invention, it was preservation. Strong flavors were the byproduct of patience and cleverness, a way to stretch harvests through leaner seasons. What begins as strange becomes familiar, and what is peculiar becomes essential. You breathe in again, the sharp tang lingering in the air, and it feels as though the agora has shifted once more. It is no longer merely a marketplace of fruits, breads, and meats. It is a laboratory of taste, a living experiment where Athenians dared to push their food into stranger territories, turning rot into richness, sour into sublime. You wipe your mouth, half smiling at the lingering ghost of gyros, and step on. The agora continues to unfold before you, each stall a doorway into some forgotten flavor. The sun begins to soften over the agora, dipping lower, painting the marble columns with hues of honey and rose. The shouts of vendors grow slower, gentler, as baskets empty and stalls pack away their last strange treasures. You linger at the edge of the square, full from flavors you never thought you'd try, your senses wrapped in salt, smoke, and spice. There is something comforting in the fading clamor. The harsh edges of the market seem to blur, as though the day itself exhales. You watch the flicker of torches being lit, little flames taking over where sunlight leaves off. The agora becomes quieter now, almost drowsy, like the city itself is preparing for its own sleep. You think of the curious things you've tasted here: the barley and figs, the roasted chickpeas, the sour pickles, the sharp garlic, and, of course, the unforgettable bite of gyros. Each one carried not just a flavor but a story, of survival, of trade, of laughter over shared meals. Some flavors shocked you, others soothed you, but all left their mark, just as every day leaves its trace upon the city. The voices fade into background hum, softer than the buzz of bees. You can almost imagine lying down right here, the stone of the agora still warm beneath you, the air rich with the ghost of smoke and spice. Life slips into a gentler rhythm and you feel yourself moving with it, slow, steady, unhurried. Your breath falls in time with this rhythm, deepening, lengthening, carrying you away from the noise of day toward the quiet of night. Each inhale brings the faintest memory of honey and figs. Each exhale releases the weight of the marketplace. You let it go, all of it. The agora, once bustling and sharp, becomes softer, dreamlike. The peculiar foods that filled your senses now seem distant, like details of a dream you'll only half remember in the morning. You are safe here, resting in the stillness of an ancient city winding down. You are carried by its rhythm, by its gentle hum, by its long exhale. And as you close your eyes, you drift deeper, past the jars of pickles, past the sizzling griddles, past the voices of barter and banter, into a silence that holds you gently, the way night holds the city itself. Sleep comes, quiet and steady, wrapping you in its calm embrace. The agora fades, and with it, the peculiar flavors of the day dissolve into dreams.